ladies, and welcome to the Thrive Chapter Spotlight. Today we find our reading in 1 Samuel chapter 28 and also the book of Psalm chapter 140. Here we find two men both in unfavorable situations, but they handle it in two different ways. In 1 Samuel chapter 28 we see Saul. He knows that the Philistines are going to rise and fight against Israel. He is fearful and uncertain of the outcome. Because back in chapter 15, he was disobedient to God, he knows that God is not near him, that he's not answering him anymore. So he goes to some people and he asks them if there is any person with a familiar spirit who can talk to someone of the dead. He wants to seek advice from Samuel. He had just passed. So it tells us in verse 15 of 1 Samuel, "And Samuel said to Saul, Why hast thou disquieted me to bring me up? And Saul answered, I am sore distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and God is departed from me, and answereth me no more." See, Saul was distressed. He was concerned about this battle that was before him of the Philistines. He was fearful of the outcome. So he thought that by talking to Samuel, who had passed, that would be the best way for him to probably predict the future. If we flip over to the book of Psalm in chapter 140, we now see David, who we are told is a man after God's own heart. He starts the chapter by saying, "Deliver me, O Lord, from the evil man. Preserve me from the violent man." He says down in verse 7, "O God the Lord, the strength of my salvation, thou hast covered my head in the day of battle." See, these two men were both facing these situations of battle, of evil men. Here we have David, whose first priority was to seek God and to seek what God wanted. He knew that God's protection would be on him, and he was asking the Lord to deliver him from this violence of the men before him. Saul, on the other hand, was seeking anybody's advice. See, he had banished the people with the familiar spirit, or the mediums, as some may say. Yet he disguised himself to seek after one because he was so desperate to see what the future held for this battle. Ladies, this is where we find ourselves today when we face uncertain battles. Are we like Saul, grasping for any strings, for any friends, for any advice? Are we willing to settle and seek out people that may not be and are not the best people to get advice from? Or are we like David? We could be considered women after God's own heart if we pressed into him when we were faced with these situations and faced with these battles. See, if we are in a close relationship with God, reading his word, praying, and pressing into him on a daily basis, he will be our first priority. He will be the first one that we want to seek to know, God, how should we handle this situation? Where do you want us in this battle? So ladies, my challenge to you this week is, of course, to continue reading. But my challenge is for you to press in to Jesus and to see how he wants you to handle the battle that you have at hand this week. Continue reading with us, and we'll see you next week.